Tanks and Infantry, the Battle of France, 1940. The sun rose slowly over the French fields in May 1940, leaving a thin layer of mist on the ground. In the mist, a small group of French infantrymen, prepared for what they knew would be an inevitable attack. They were tired, scared, but full of determination. Suddenly, a loud roar rang out. It was the sound of German Panzer tanks driving toward them. The tanks were large and fearsome. They were a symbol of the overwhelming power of Germany. The French commander, Lieutenant Duval, shouted the order for his troops to split up. They took up positions behind mounds of earth and trees. Armed with their machine guns and anti-tank grenades, they knew their chances of survival were slim. But they were willing to fight to the death to defend their homeland. The first Panzer tank emerged from the fog, its machine gun firing incessantly. The French soldiers returned fire, but their bullets seemed to have no effect on the tank. "Fire the anti-tank grenade," Lieutenant Duval shouted. A soldier named Marcel aimed at the tank and fired his grenade. The grenade hit the front of the tank and exploded violently. The tank stopped, black smoke billowing from it. The French soldiers cheered, but their joy was short-lived. Two more panzers appeared from the fog. The fighting intensified. The French soldiers fought bravely, but they were quickly outnumbered. Lieutenant Duval knew they could no longer hold off the tanks. "Retreat!" he shouted. The remaining soldiers began to retreat, firing their last bullets into the enemy. As the sun sank behind the western sky, Lieutenant Duval and his small group of soldiers retreated to the nearby forest. They were exhausted and wounded, but they were still alive. The battle that day was a defeat. But it was also a testament to the courage and determination of the French soldiers. They fought to the end, even though they knew their chances were slim. Their story became a symbol of France's resistance against German invasion. Tanks and Infantry, Part 2, Jungle Raid. The early morning fog had lifted as Lieutenant Duval and his surviving soldiers took refuge deep in the jungle. They were tired, hungry, and wounded, but their eyes were still alert. The roar of panzer tanks could still be heard not far away, indicating that the enemy was still in pursuit. "We can't keep running," Lieutenant Duval told his men, scrolling through a sweat-soaked map. "We must find a way to counterattack, or at least slow them down." Marcel, the young soldier who had destroyed the first tank yesterday, pointed to the map. "Lieutenant, here is a narrow path through the forest. It's a good location for an ambush." Lieutenant Duval looked at Marcel with interest. The idea seemed plausible. The dense forest would hinder the movement of the enemy. Tanks and provide cover for their infantry. "Very good, Marcel," he said. "We will set up an ambush there. Marcel, you will lead a small group to set up anti-tank mines for the rest of us. The others will take up positions along the edge of the road with their machine guns." The work began immediately. The soldiers dug small pits for the mines and covered them with leaves and branches. The others lined up their machine guns, waiting for the enemy to enter their traps. The hours passed slowly. The roar of the tanks grew closer and closer. Finally, 3 panzer tanks emerged from the edge of the forest, driving slowly along the narrow road. The German tank commanders were unaware of the danger that awaited them ahead. Suddenly, the lead tank hit a mine. A huge explosion shook the ground and black smoke billowed into the sky. At the same time, French machine guns opened heavy fire on the other 2 tanks. The remaining German tanks tried to return fire, but the dense forest blocked their view. The French fired relentlessly, causing severe damage to the tanks. Finally, another tank caught fire and the last one tried to retreat. "Shoot it! Don't let it escape," Lieutenant Duval shouted. Marcel fired another anti-tank grenade at the retreating tank. The grenade hit its rear and the tank exploded violently. The fighting had subsided. The forest was filled with smoke and the smell of explosives. The French soldiers shouted with joy. They had won a small victory. Lieutenant Duval looked at his soldiers with pride. "We did it! We showed that no matter how strong they are, they cannot defeat us. The victory gave the French soldiers courage. They knew that the war was far from over, but they also knew that they could fight back. The forest raid became a story that demonstrated the courage of the French army during World War II. Tanks and Infantry, Part 3, Waiting in Hope. After a small but meaningful victory in the jungle, Lieutenant Duval and his remaining soldiers realized that they could no longer continue the fight alone. Their ammunition was running low, their strength was dwindling, and they were still behind enemy lines. Their next goal was to find other French forces, or at least find a way back to Allied-held territory. "We must move on," Lieutenant Duval said to his men as they examined the map again in the moonlight. "Here's a village called Villeneuve. It may be where we can find food and water, and perhaps some information about the war situation." They walked through the dark forest all night very carefully. Every sound of a branch breaking frightened them. As the sun began to rise, they reached the edge of Villeneuve. It was a small village with a few houses and a church. An eerie silence fell over the village. "Be careful, everyone," Lieutenant Duval whispered. "There could be Germans here." They entered the village slowly, readying their guns. Many of the houses were destroyed, and some of the doors were open. It was clear that a battle had taken place here. As they walked through the village streets, they saw an old man sitting in front of his ruined house. He looked tired and hopeless. "Greetings, Grandpa," Marcel said to the old man. "What's going on here? Are there any German soldiers here?" The old man looked up at them. His eyes were filled with sadness. "The German soldiers arrived yesterday. They destroyed our houses and took our food. They've gone east. Are there any French troops around here?" Lieutenant Duval asked hopefully. The old man shook his head. "I don't know. We've been abandoned." The old man's words made the French soldiers feel hopeless. However, Lieutenant Duval knew that they could not give up. "We will not give up," he said to his soldiers. "We will find a way to continue fighting. Now we will rest here for a while and find something to eat." While they were resting, the sound of a plane suddenly sounded from the sky. It was an Allied reconnaissance plane. Lieutenant Duval ordered his soldiers to use the signal glass to send a message to the plane. The plane descended lower, and the pilot raised a small French flag. It was a sign that they had been found. Hope was rekindled in the hearts of the French soldiers. They knew that help was coming. The battle continued, but at least they were no longer alone. Their story showed that even in the midst of despair, hope can survive.